Welcome to the Fractured Families podcast. I'm Charity, your dedicated parental alienation coach, here to guide and support families as they navigate the challenges of high conflict divorces and custody battles. On this podcast, we'll share insights, practical strategies, and hope for those on the journey toward healing and justice. Whether you're personally experiencing these challenges or just want to learn more about the complexities of parental alienation and custody disputes, you're in the right place. You are not alone. This is the Fractured Families podcast, where every voice matters and every story is heard. And if you find my conversation helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us reach more families who need it. Hey, thanks for joining the Fractured Families podcast. I'm Charity, your host. I have with me today Krystal Bussard-Shannon, who is going to share her story in a two series. She's going to share her story as an alienated now adult child and as an alienated step-parent. So we get the opportunity to hear about her experience as an alienated child. So Krystal, thank you so much for being a guest. Why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I was an alienated child. I was alienated from my mother for 20 years. I was forcibly taken from her as an infant and raised by my dad's family. Not my dad himself, but my dad's family. My grandmother and my aunt were instrumental in my raising, and they were the ones who alienated my mother. And they pressured my dad to allow that to happen. And when I was 33, I discovered that my dad is not my biological father. So after that, I found my biological family on my biological father's side, only to discover that he passed away 8 days before I found out his identity. The reason that I ended up with my dad's family instead of my mother's family is because they'd alienated her from me. My dad was 20 years older than my mom. She was 17 when she was pregnant with me. She was just a child. And my dad helped to get her hooked on some pretty hardcore drugs. And she struggled with that for the remainder of her life until she committed suicide when I was 20 and she was just 39.
That's so heartbreaking. So how did you determine, how did you find out, one, that your mom was alienated? Did she play any role in your life during your upbringing at all?
A small role. She was in and out when I was very young. The last memory I have of her was when I was about 4 or 5 years old. My dad made a small effort to include her, and he allowed her to come into his home, be there for me whenever she could or whenever she chose. It was his mother, my grandmother, and my aunt, his sister, who eventually said, "We're going to cut you out of the will if you allow your daughter's mother in her life any longer." They were open with me about this in childhood. They told me directly the ways that they ended up alienating both her and her entire family from me. And they always framed it as protection, right? Your mother was bad. She did not love you. She wasn't safe. And we love you. And we wanted to keep you safe. So we didn't want you to have anything to do with her. They were very open about that. But it wasn't until adulthood, after a hurricane, as I grew up on the Gulf Coast, I'm cleaning out my grandmother's house and I find a giant stack of letters from my mom. She had been writing to me my entire life. The letters were ruined by floodwater, so I knew they existed, but I could never read them because they had been destroyed. But up until that point, it was my understanding that she just stopped showing up one day. And that is why they kept me, essentially. And when I found those letters when I was about 19 or 20, shortly before I met her in person, that illusion shattered. Because all of a sudden I had physical proof that a lot of the things that they were telling me were either lies, full fabrication, or that they had severely twisted the truth.
So what happened with your relationship with them when you figured this out?
Well, my grandmother had already passed away when I discovered this, but my aunt was still alive. Things got very strange with them very quickly. They were very hostile to any questions that I had. They shut down communication really quickly. They did not want to talk about any of it. And then so I went to my dad, who, to his credit, did tell me the truth about what really happened. And eventually, with time, I cut all of them out. I have no relationship any longer with any member of my dad's family. They were never good people. We never had a great relationship. I never really felt like them. I never felt understood by them. They were not good parents. But they were very, very controlling. And that is what I knew love to be for a very long time. And it wasn't until I was out on my own, I had moved halfway across the country, that I realized, like, I can't talk to them anymore. They don't want what's best for me. They want me to be under their control. They don't want me to have my own life. They want me to be an extension of them. And so now I have, with the remaining living members of the family, I have no relationship with any of them.
Wow. So, what was it like when you met your mom, and how did that transpire?
I met her because a younger brother found me on MySpace way back in the day, back when MySpace was popular. He knew my name, but I didn't know that he was around. Kind of to go backwards a little bit. On my 13th birthday, I found a birth certificate with both my mom and my dad's name on it for a different child named Michael. And so I'm very confused. I don't know why this exists. Everyone has told me my whole life I don't have siblings. So why is there a birth certificate with my mom and my dad's name on it for a child who's not me? My mother was very troubled. She was a drug addict. She became a prostitute and ended up dying very young. And she went on to have 3 other living children. And so the child that came after me, who was 3 years younger than me, his name is Michael. He was adopted within her biological family. And the way that the rules were set up in the early 90s in Texas, you had to have a father on the birth certificate in order to do a voluntary adoption. So she contacted my dad and said, please help me, because Michael's biological father is nowhere to be found. And so my dad helped, and my grandmother kept all of the paperwork just in case anything ever came back to them one day. So while she was telling me my entire life, you're the only one, you're an only child, there's no one else, they knew the entire time that I had siblings. They knew how to get in contact with them. They just denied their existence until I found literal proof of it on my 13th birthday, which not a great time for me. The explanation that I was given was just that, my mom needed help and my dad was willing to help her. And that did turn out to be true. We later met. But because he was on the birth certificate, Michael always had questions, and he was aware of his parentage. He knew where he came from. He knew that he had been adopted within the family. He knew my dad's name because he had paperwork as well. So when he got to be about 18 years old, he went looking for me because he thought that I didn't know about him. And I knew he existed, but I didn't quite understand the complexities of it all. So when he found me, I was around 20 years old, shortly before my 21st birthday. And then I met my mom's side of the family, the whole family, pretty much at the same time. I showed up to someone's house, and all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I'm looking at people who look like me. It was like having a mirror held up to me for the first time. Up until that point, I thought, well, I must be like them, because I'm nothing like my dad's family. I don't look like them. I don't act like them. I don't think like them. So I must just be like my mom. And then I met her and that whole side of the family, and everything clicked. I am finally around people who understand me without me having to explain myself, who look like me, who think like me, who inherently understood me. And I wish I had gotten a lot more time with them, but the time that I got with them ended up being very short. I had my mom for about a year before she died. I had my brother for about the same amount of time before he went to prison. I had my grandmother in my life for around 3 years before she died of cancer, but they fell off fast. I ended up having very, very little time with most of them.
So how did your dad's family take it when you reconnected with your biological mom and her family?
My dad was very supportive. He was honestly pretty great about it. He understood very well. He knew that she was part of me and that I needed that other half. He was very supportive. But the rest of the family took my interest in them like a personal slight. Because I wanted to connect with them, I was rejecting my family of origin. The thing is, they weren't wrong, but that's not why. I was rejecting them because the lies that they built my life on were crumbling around me. And suddenly, things that I knew to be true for most of my life, I suddenly knew they weren't true. I got to spend a lot more time with my grandmother, who told me they fought for me. They tried to go back to court. They showed up places. They called every day. They sent hundreds of letters. The letters that I found were just a fraction of the letters they sent. They also tried to kind of set life up for me later on. They bought stocks in my name. They tried to create retirement accounts. They loved me clearly very much, but from afar. And they had all of the proof of that. Whereas I had been told my whole life, your mother's a crackhead. She never loved you. She never wanted anything to do with you. She didn't want to be a mom. And that's why you're with us. But none of that was true. None of it. They did all of the typical alienating things, right? They moved me around when phone calls were coming so that I wouldn't even hear the phone ring. They intercepted letters. They gate kept information. They put notices out with the school just in case anyone ever tried to come and see me. And they did their very best to make me feel like my mother was dangerous, that I wouldn't be safe with her, and that anyone affiliated with her would also have bad intentions. But I mean, that's the thing about growing up with a family you're not biologically related to. There is something inside of you that goes, something's not right here. And I felt that for as long as I can remember. I was very, very young when I started asking people if I'm adopted because I didn't fit.
So when you met your mom and she obviously is telling you that she's made all these attempts, what was that like?
It was so overwhelming, it's almost hard to remember. Like all the air went out in the room. And it wasn't just that it all made sense, it felt true as well. Like this was something I did not need to investigate on my own. And that was not an experience that I had very much growing up. I grew up to be an investigative finance person. I spend my life investigating things. And it's absolutely because growing up, I felt like everything that was told to me needed to be investigated to figure out if it was true or not. But when I met them, maybe the first time in my life, I felt like this makes sense. This makes sense logically and it feels true. And I don't think that I really knew what felt right or not until I met them. Because that was the first time in my life that things clicked into place.
So you said at 33 you found out that your father was not your biological father.
Yeah.
Was that more investigation on your side?
More investigation. Yeah. I got an ancestry.com test for my birthday or for Christmas one year. And man, that thing is the gift that keeps on giving. Bussard is a Cajun name. So we're a small subset of people in southern Louisiana. Um, I did not look like my family, but I did look like other Cajun people that I grew up with. There's a pretty wide variety of phenotypes that happen with Cajun people because there's a long history of intermixing with a bunch of different kinds of communities in southern Louisiana. It's a very, very unique melting pot of people. But Broussard might as well be Smith down there. It's a very, very, very common name. So the moment that I opened my ancestry results and there wasn't a single Broussard in there, I knew immediately that is not my biological father. There's no possible way. So then I go and I find a known relative, someone I grew up with, someone I know is biologically related. He was a child of my grandmother's brother, so a cousin of sorts to me. I can see my dad in his biological line. He's not in mine. So that took a few weeks to find. But once I found it, I knew for sure. So I started connecting with people that were biologically related to me. And it was difficult, right? Because I didn't grow up with my mom. I don't know her side of the family well. Her last name was Walker. That's not helpful. So I started trying to piece apart, okay, who is mom's side? Who is dad's side? Where is biological mother? Where is biological father? And how do I tell them apart? So I started digging first in marriage and divorce records in Texas, where I'm from, and I found a bunch of people on my mom's side. I was able to connect with them and confirm, okay, these ancestors are from my mother's side. So the rest of these unknowns have to be from my biological father's side. And I started reaching out to them. I had a cousin in Canada who was able to talk with me and confirm that, yep, there's lots of us and we're spread out all over the place because of some really awful generational trauma that happened a few generations back where kids ended up in an orphanage. And so there's lots of us all over the place. She got me in contact with her brother, who was searching for his biological child. He had been alienated from his child, and he had been searching for her for about 30 years.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
so he had tons of research looking for his child that he'd put together. So he's in Canada. I'm in the middle of the country in the Midwest. So we got together over Zoom and we start going through ancestry possibilities. They added me to a Facebook group for ancestors of this one particular person who was sort of the matriarch and patriarch of the family. And as soon as they added me to that Facebook group, all of these people have my face. That was the moment I realized, oh my God, I don't look like my mom. Up until then, I thought I looked exactly like my mother until I met these Canadian cousins who look exactly like me. It was probably a year later that I got confirmation for sure. I got a cousin who was close enough in ancestry to me to confirm that he is a first cousin. And then I started putting the story together. I went through arrest records in Texas, and I discovered a man in this family was my mother's next door neighbor when she and my dad first got married. And so I put the story together through through ancestry records and arrest records.
So, did your dad know this, or I mean, how did that unravel?
I have no confirmation that he knew for sure. He passed away in my early 20s, so I'll
Okay.
never get the chance to talk with him about it. But looking back on it, I think he knew. He and my biological father were friends. They were neighbors. They lived next door to each other in a duplex. So my dad and my mom were on one side, and my biological father, a biological brother, and his mother lived next door. When I got in contact with my biological brother on that side, I told him that I was born in Texas, and he said, I was born in Texas. And I said, well, where were you born? And he said, Channelview. Channelview is not even a real town. It's like an unincorporated suburb of Houston. I was born in Channelview. We were born in the same hospital, doors down from each other. That was the final click. Like, oh my God, you are my brother. And then he showed me his daughter who looks exactly like me.
So do you have a relationship with him?
I do not. He has a lot of trepidation about inviting new people into his life, and can't say I blame him. Um, our parentage is not a good story. His father was, my biological father was, by all accounts, not a good person. Wasn't really involved in his upbringing, very on and off. Had no interest in meeting his grandchildren before he died. Just by all accounts, not a really good guy, which tracks because my mom was 17 when she was pregnant with me. And he had an infant at home with his wife. So yeah, I get it. I totally get it. He felt a little bombarded because I was on a mission to find out the truth. And that involved him. He, number one, was very unsure of my intentions. And also he has a daughter to think about. It's more than just him now. He would be inviting me into their life, and I don't think he's really interested in that. I can't say that I blame him. It's not a super fun position for me to be in, but he's thinking about his kid, and I can't blame him for that.
So you find out that your mom did not reject you and didn't push you away and did love you. And you disconnected from that family. Was it immediate or did that take some time for you to completely walk away?
It took a few years. I met my mom when I was 20, and all of those people came into my life. And it wasn't until I was around 26 that I finally cut the final cord. My aunt called me as I was moving from a house to an apartment in the city that I was going to college in. And she burst into tears when I told her that I was moving 8 miles north. Her reaction was, "You just can't wait to get further away from me." I hung up on her and I have never spoken to her again. I am now 38. So it's been 12
So
years.
she
She
was
was the last.
essentially, so she was the last person and she essentially was like a mom figure.
Yeah. Yeah. She was the closest thing I had to a mom growing up. I lived with my momo, my dad's mom. My dad was not equipped to raise children. He tried, he did his best, but his best wasn't very good. And he knew that his life and his lifestyle and what he was capable of wasn't going to be good for a child. And I stayed with him on and off. I lived with him periodically throughout my childhood, but my main parents were my grandmother and my aunt. She was incredibly involved in my raising. She had 2 boys and she never had a girl. So I became her little plaything. I was a dress-up doll. I was the kid that they would parade out in front of people and, the big poofy homemade dresses and, the family, all of that. I was the kid that they paraded around. Less of an actual child and more of a trophy for them. They weren't super interested in me as a person or who I was becoming. They wanted me to do with it. And because she never got the opportunity to raise a girl, she took it with me. And of course, I'm nothing like them. So it didn't go well.
And you felt that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you start to unravel this. You start to figure out what's going on. At what point did you realize this was a form of alienation? And I only bring that topic up because in our next session, we'll talk about you being an alienated parent. And did you learn of it as a formal abuse or did you kind of piece that together?
It really clicked home for me when I was in the middle of family court with my husband. It was when my stepdaughter's mother was doing the exact same things that I saw my aunt do in childhood that I realized, truly realized what happened. I had all of the pieces already, but I did not have a name for it until I was going through it myself, until I was watching my stepdaughter's mother tell her, "He's not your dad. He doesn't love you. He have to take care of a child to be a dad, and he doesn't take care of you. He's selfish. He doesn't want to be in your life. He's just a sperm donor." Like, they called my mother an egg donor constantly. And it wasn't until I was watching this little girl go through the exact same thing that I realized that I had been abused in this way. You make a lot of excuses for your family of origin as you're growing because you have to in order to remain safe with them. And so I called this abuse all kinds of things. She's just like that, or she's very protective, or I made tons of excuses for it. But it wasn't until I was seeing it happen to someone else in this really, really intimate manner that I fully understood what happened to me and how responsible they were in my lack of relationship with that side of the family. And even after I had plenty of conversations with my mom's side of the family, it didn't click. It didn't register to me as a form of abuse until I watched another child go through it.
So, being as an alienated adult child and now going through it as a step parent, I'm sure you're very familiar with the consequences that come from alienation. And so, when you think about yourself and what you endured as a child and the things that you've heard your grandma and your auntie say, how do you feel that has impacted you? I mean, it sounds like you've gone through a lot, you've learned a lot, but it has some impact.
Absolutely. I've been in therapy for 15 years on and off. I've tried every different sort of modality possible, tons of different medications, all the woo stuff, like stuff that's not even there. I've tried everything. And for a long time, the biggest thing that I noticed in myself was that I felt I had to earn love and affection. I had to twist myself in ways in order to please the people around me, or they would leave, or they wouldn't love me. That's been the biggest thing, is I almost inherently want to jump in and fix things, which is something that I discovered hardcore about myself during family court, is I want to fix it. I want these bad feelings to go away. I want to make it I want to make it to where we're not fighting anymore. And you can do that in some really, really, really destructive ways. And I know that throughout my childhood, I struggled very, very hard with anger and not having a clue where the anger came from. I was just angry at everything and everyone. I still don't trust authority. And that has truly gotten worse over the years because of just the institution of family court. There's a very, very deep sense of betrayal in the people who were supposed to love you and take care of you, and instead used you as a tool. It's definitely affected my ability to make and keep relationships of all kinds, make and keep jobs. I find myself getting fed up and wanting to just quit and leave and run. It's made all things relational far more difficult.
So when you got to meet your mom for the first time as you met your brother, what did she say and what was her thoughts around what happened?
The first thing she told me was that I was planned, which is so funny because with who?
Right.
It wasn't planned by anybody, I don't think. But I look back on that now, and I think that she wanted to let me know that she chose me. She wanted me here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also like seeing your own mannerisms on someone you've never met is crazy. I felt instantly connected to her. Like she was the thing I had been looking for my whole life.
Yeah, so I can't even imagine what was going through your mind, and you're still so young at that age. We think, "Oh, we're adults," but we are far from
We're far from
capable.
it.
We are
Yeah.
far from being, like, emotionally ready, and when you have all this thrown at you, it's even more challenging to process that, and it doesn't sound like you had a lot of time with her after that.
No. I only saw her again in person one other time before she died.
So after you met with her and your grandmother had already passed at that point, right? And then you said it took you some time to separate, completely detach from that family. You hear a lot about Stockholm syndrome in a lot of these cases, right?
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. For a while, even I got even closer to my aunt because she really stepped once I met them, she really stepped her game up in trying to maintain a connection with me. She called me every day and just and for the first time in my life, she started sending me birthday cards. She started sending me gifts. I had never experienced anything like that. I had a childhood full of no birthday parties. And suddenly I meet my mom's side of the family and she and my cousins and my uncles and everyone, all of the sudden now they're telling me we love you. We want you around. Almost like she reserved that for just in case I ever decided to get away. And
So
that also took a long time to tease apart because I was finally getting something I wanted so badly. And so it took until I had it took until I started seeing the strings connected behind it that, she wanted me to come home more often. She wanted me to come and see her. She wanted me to do a favor for her. She wanted to try to pull me back in. And the thing is like I don't think that she's malicious. I think that she's very, very, very broken. Her goal was to make herself feel better, not to make me feel bad. But she also did not care how it made me feel because she was her priority in our relationship. She's kind of proven that over and over and over again. I no longer have any contact with any of the family members, but I do sometimes speak to my cousin's wife, who would be my auntie's daughter-in-law, and she has told me many, 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 many times, "You have made the right decision to stay away. It has not gotten better. It's only gotten worse, and you're doing the right thing for you."
and I'm sure that there was some doubt even after you walked away because that was the family you knew, right? That was as dysfunctional as their intent was, to your point, when she started to really ramp up her control, because that is a form of manipulation. When they start to lose control, they use whatever tools and tactics they can to get you back.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it
and she
still was your
did.
family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she did. She employed every tool possible. She tried to bribe me. They sent me money. Like, I had been homeless at one point and they did not send me money. But she sent me money after I met my mom. And she also tried all of the harmful things too. She tried guilting me, she tried making me feel bad, she tried getting me to enroll in a school that was close to them even though it didn't fit me. She offered gifts, she offered to help pay my rent if I moved closer to home. She pulled out every trick in the book, but it did not work. I couldn't unsee the things that I had seen. I couldn't unfeel the things that I had felt. And I desperately, desperately wanted to get as far away from my hometown as I possibly could because I had a terrible upbringing that they witnessed and participated in.
Right. Yeah.
And so by the time that she was pulling out all the stops, it was way too late.
Well, Krystal, I thank you for sharing this part of your story. And I think it's going to be a perfect transition into the overlay of how now you and your husband are dealing with alienation with his ex-wife. So I really think it's going to be intriguing and interesting to see that overlap in what you experience and what you know that your stepchild is experiencing now because you lived through that. Any final thoughts before we close out of this session?
I want other alienated adult kids to know, like, it's a lot of work. It does get better. It's a lot of work, a lot, but it does get better. You will wake up one day and that pit in that feeling in the pit of your stomach won't be there. That's a lot of work. And I wish that I had had more community while we were going through the active alienation phase. And I wish that more people were aware of how this works and how damaging it is to your child.
It is. Thank you for being a guest on the Fractured Families podcast, for sharing, and we look forward to the next visit.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Fractured Families podcast. I hope our conversation has provided you with support, understanding, and actionable insights to help you navigate your own family challenges. Remember, healing is a journey, and reaching out for help is a sign of strength. You're not alone. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more families in need. You can contact me on social media at Parental Alienation is Real and visit our website for additional resources and ways to get involved. Stay strong, stay connected, and keep fighting for the family bonds that matter most. Until next time, take care and stay resilient.